and I first met him when he was plying his trade, working with the Nebraska Cornhusker Radio Network, then to West Virginia, where we spent a lot of time together when Texas and West Virginia were playing women's basketball or baseball. And he went to North Dakota State, and then a place that's just like Fargo, North Dakota, Tallahassee, Florida. The voice of the Florida State Seminoles, Jeff Culhane, joins me now. How are you, Jeffrey?
Man, it's great to see you and be with you, my friend. We're doing great. And you are right. There are maybe two places on this world that are less like each other from a weather perspective. It is Fargo, North Dakota, and Tallahassee, Florida. That's for sure.
Yeah, well, but true confessions here. If I remember correctly, didn't you tell me, aren't you originally from South Dakota? Is that right?
Yeah, correct. Mitchell, South Dakota, home of the Corn Palace. I'm sure many of your listeners would be very interested in knowing about that tourist destination in the summer months. But it's been a fun journey, Craig, as you laid it out. It's been a fun ride, and man, I've been able to meet a lot of great people along the way, just like yourself. And we're meeting some, having fun here at Florida State, and really, really appreciate being a part of the family right now. That's for sure.
Well, I know that it has to be an exciting time there in Tallahassee. I know what that feeling's like when things really get off to a really nice start, and especially I would imagine, and I'll let you expand on this, when coming off the disappointment and the frustration of 2-10 a year ago, when there were high expectations, injuries, and so much. And then to be able to flip it like that and do it this year. I know a lot of hard work went into it for Coach Norvell and his staff, but can you describe what it was like, first coming through the 2-10 of a year ago, the off-season grind and the work that went into getting things off to such a fabulous start last Saturday at Doak Campbell Stadium?
Yeah, I think it would go back even further, Craig. It would go back to 2023, quite honestly, when Florida State was left out of the college football playoff at 13-0. I think it began there. And then in the Orange Bowl, Florida State didn't have their team that played against a Georgia team that arguably was, even though they got beat by Bama in the SEC title game, you could say was one of the best teams, if not the best team still in college football that season. And so, from really that point in December of 2023, there was a little bad taste in your mouth. And then the start a year ago in Dublin, things just really snowballed on the Noles and it went downhill in a hurry. And that was a tough fall for everybody. And nobody, I think, wore it harder than the head coach, Mike Norvell. And he understood and understands. He's made it very clear and very evident. He understands the expectation and understands what needs to be done on a day-by-day basis as the head coach of Florida State football. And he went out and made changes. He went and got two great coordinators and Gus Malzahn, which was really a coup, coming from UCF as the head coach there. And then Tony White is one of the great defensive minds in college football. I think Tony White, Craig, is going to be a head coach somewhere. I mean, he's got that kind of energy about him and just a great person and a great coach. And we've seen it during his time at Syracuse and Nebraska, and also 4 new assistant coaches as well. But, Mike Norvell has really preached edge. He's wanted to see his guys have that intensity and that competitive fire that Florida State had when they won 19 games in a row from 2022 into 2023. And we really saw that idea, that edge on display versus Alabama in a lot of, one-off situations, fourth down situations where literally was a couple of inches that separated a drive continuing and momentum shifting. And I think the changes that were needed, that were made by Mike Norvell, we really saw on full display in this game on Saturday in that win over Bama.
One thing you mentioned, the staff changes, and there are coaches in this business and who are rather inflexible, and ultimately it may wind up costing them their job one way or another. But I think I've always felt that having the flexibility to be able to say, hey, we've got to get somebody in here to do this different. We've got to think outside the box, that sort of thing. And it sounds like that's what you just described with Mike Norvell about making some changes within the staff and getting some people in there who could bring perhaps a different, if not fresher, approach to what needed to happen on the field.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, as as the job has changed, as the game has changed, right, around college football and college athletics, head coaches now more so than ever are CEO types. They are not as ingrained in the X's and O's and the adjustments and the play calling, or some still are doing that, obviously. But Mike Norvell, I think, was looking for some of that added help within the actual game planning. And, Gus Malzahn, from an offensive play calling perspective, that's the name of the game for Gus, right? I mean, that's what he was known for in Arkansas as a high school coach, and with the Razorbacks, and then at Auburn, and so to be able to bring in Gus, who Mike has had a great relationship with, and in fact worked with Gus his first full-time collegiate head coaching job at Tulsa back in 2007. Herb Hand also there. Texas fans know Herb obviously as an O-line coach. All those guys have reconnected now, and you saw, I think, the way that this thing can move forward with that new energy, some new voices in the room, obviously. And when you go through a year like Florida State did a season ago, you need to have that, and there needs to be a little bit of a recalibration. It's not a total culture change by any point, because Mike Norvell has been consistent in his messaging in the building day in and day out, no matter the wins or the losses. But yes, I think being able to have the flexibility for the first time in his career as a head coach to not call the plays and giving that up to Gus shows that he understands the situation and made the right moves here to start the season with bringing the right guys in.
Visiting with Jeff Culhane, play-by-play voice of the Florida State Seminoles here on 1300 The Zone. Okay, I wanted to get your perspective on this, because when we walked out of the stadium in Columbus and got in the car to go back to the hotel, big line of traffic, so it was going to take us a while once we got out of the parking garage. And the first thing on my mind was, I need to hear the Florida State Alabama game. Yeah. So the first thing, when I popped on satellite radio, the first broadcast came up was the Alabama radio with our friend Chris Stewart and the crew. And I'm listening to them, and they were in a mad scramble because they started to mention how hard the rain was coming down, how they were trying to cover up their equipment to keep from it. Yeah. So I was wondering if you were going through a similar thing, because then as I flipped over to your broadcast, I heard you describe it just in torrents, in sheets. Used one phrase, I don't even remember what it was, but it made me laugh in talking about, and it described a good picture of how intense the rain was at that time.
Yeah, I would agree. It was a scramble, well, for sure. And in Florida, you can see the clouds coming, and they were starting to hover and starting to circle around Doak Campbell Stadium. And you knew that rain was inevitable over about a 20 to 25 minute period prior to the raindrops getting there. And when it hit, it wasn't just a light sprinkle. It hit hard. And as I'm sure you've discussed with your radio crew, our engineers started going to work, moving things around, getting, walking behind us, getting on tables, trying to get electronics out of the way. And then the rain started to blow into the booth with the wind. And so we had to shut the windows. And for a period of time, and late in the second quarter, legitimately, it felt like you were going through a car wash. I mean, I'm trying to find a crease on the windows where I can see clearly onto the field. And we're almost guessing at times, Craig, with what was going on. It was almost like the fog game at Old Soldier Field in the late 80s with the Eagles and the Bears. And thankfully, as people know, in Florida, the rain usually doesn't hang around very often for the most part, and that went away by halftime. And in the second half, we could open up the windows and let it rip. But yeah, for a period of time, we knew there was a chance for rain in the game. Watching the forecast, thankfully, it was only for a brief period, and also thankfully there was no lightning in the area that caused any delays and disruption into the flow of the game.
No doubt about it. You see, here's what it made me think of, and you just described what I kind of went through. Back in 2007, Texas was playing UCF, and UCF was opening their stadium, the new stadium there, which at the time was called Bright House Network Stadium, I think. Mm-hmm. And we found it ironic that in a place that had a cable and telecommunications company as the naming rights sponsor, they didn't have any cabling into the booth. We had no
Yeah.
TV monitors in the booth at that
Right.
time.
Yeah.
I remember, I remember that. But the thing that came to mind was, and you've seen, when I've had my broadcast boards before, a lot of people, whatever, say
Yeah.
things, hey, those look nice, or this and that, and I always laminate them. I didn't have time on that trip to laminate the board, so that's no big deal. And I had it in. And one of those rainstorms, just like what you described, came blowing through midway through the third quarter, and the rain's blowing in, and those spotting charts, they look great, but one thing they were not was waterproof.
Yep.
And so the colors start running, and I have to drop it into my lap. Fortunately or unfortunately, the game got stopped because there was lightning. And when they came out after about an hour and 15-minute delay, it was like a sauna.
Yeah.
And the Texas players started sucking wind, and they barely got out of there alive. I think Kevin Smith ran for 150 yards for UCF. Texas won like 35-32. And Mac Brown always said, that was the dumbest mistake I ever made, was one of the dumbest mistakes I ever made, was agreeing to play a team in the grand opening of their stadium. But that's Florida weather, right? I mean, you get rain like that. Afternoon thunderstorms in the summer and early fall are a regular thing, aren't they?
Well, quite honestly, we had a great day weather-wise outside of the rain coming down. The initial forecast had, you're thinking August 30th in Tallahassee. You're thinking, heat index of 106, and no just shade, no screen from the sun, and you're worried about some people, quite honestly. But it turned out to be a perfect day outside of the rain weather-wise. I mean, it was 82, 83 degrees. There was cloud cover all day. The sun only popped out a few times, which didn't really turn up the heat too much. So from that standpoint, it was pretty good. But yeah, I mean, I 2 years ago, Florida State Miami played. I think it was November 13th was the date, and it was 85 degrees on November 13th, and we called it Florida football weather. I mean, there's no such thing as a day in the 20s or 30s in November here in the state of Florida. So you get used to it. Your blood thins out pretty quick, but you better be ready to navigate a brief shower or a delay, because that's just part of the deal signing up down here.
What really impressed you coming out? I know one of the things that impressed me, what the Seminoles did, was to run for 230 yards on that Bama defense. That was one of the things that impressed me. And then the other thing was their ability to answer. Once Bama tried to make a push and got within a touchdown, to just turn it right back around with a quick answer score to keep them at arm's length.
Yeah, Craig, I'm with you on both of those. Just the physicality that Florida State played with. Didn't see that a year ago. Really didn't see it. We saw a little bit in 2023, but I thought from just an actual pads popping perspective, that's as hard as we've seen around here in quite some time. I mean, it was a defense that was meeting Alabama on their side of the line of scrimmage, their side of the fence, if you will. And Bama is known for elite offensive lines, elite defensive lines, and they have those pieces in place. They were missing Tim Keenan in the middle defensively, who is an all SEC performer. So that was a loss for them, but they still have very, very good players and very good depth. Florida State just flat out beat them. I mean, that's it. I mean, 2 touchdown underdogs coming off a 2-win season. No one outside of Tallahassee gave Florida State a shot. And look, I get it, right? I understand it. And so to see the result of all the things, and, as we talked about a little bit ago, playing with that edge and responding and winning 2 huge fourth down conversions on the defensive side. And I'll tell you, just an amazing moment to me that shows how this team has come together and how much they trust each other right now, Craig. There's 11 minutes left in the game, and Bama has made it a 7-point contest. It's 24-17, and they've had the ball two times, 2 plays to 1. For Florida State, 31 total plays, Florida State 15 in the second half. And the defense is gassed. They are gassed. And it's 4th and 1, 4th and 2 at our own 30 with 11 minutes to go. And Mike Norvell says, we're going to go for it. Because he knew if he punted it, that his defense didn't have enough juice to go out and stop Bama, and Bama would go down and score and take the momentum and probably win the game. And Florida State responded. The offense responded and got the first down, moved Bama on a 4th and 2, and then went down and scored the game-winning touchdown on just a great physical run by Oklahoma transfer Gavin Sawchuk, who you guys have seen before from the running back spot. And so that was a response moment, but also a trust moment that a head coach had with his team, with 11 completely new guys on offense, Craig, for Florida State offensively. That shows you what Mike Norvell's been seeing in practice, and the belief and the connection they've had. It was on full display in that moment.
You have three just major headline grabbing games on the schedule down the road: Miami at home, and then at Clemson, and then of course the game in Gainesville against Florida on Thanksgiving weekend. That all of that is there. I was amused to see that you've got East Texas A&M coming in this week. They were competitive for a time against SMU. That's the old Texas A&M Commerce, and
Yes.
when they were D2, and even before then. Originally, East Texas State, where their proudest alum probably was Harvey Martin of the Dallas Cowboys front four fame back in the day. So I would imagine the old thing about coaches say, hey, we worry about ourselves and not so much about the opponent this week, right?
You are correct. And 7 name changes for the school, Craig, dating back to 1889. So, they're kind of like Prince. They're going to be a symbol here at some point soon. But all kidding aside, the connection is East Texas A&M AD Jim Curry was with Michael Alford here at Florida State for a long time and was a part of the FSU athletic department for 11 years. And so there's a connection there with their relationship. And the Lions are trying to build up their program at the FCS level and at the Division I level. And they hung in there with SMU a bit on Saturday night. And so, but you have to continue to go out and play. And I think everyone is, everyone's obviously excited about the win, but it's one game. It's a long season. I mean, injuries can happen. You got to have a little bit of luck along the way. And we honestly get a little bit of PTSD, Craig, in games like this. 2 years ago against North Alabama is when Jordan Travis suffered the lower leg injury that ended his football career and essentially ended Florida State's playoff hopes. So these games, you want to get in, you want to impose your will, you want to play a lot of guys and get guys out of there healthy. That's the expectation. But you don't want to see 2 steps back after really what was 10 steps forward for Florida State, and that win over Alabama. And we'll see, what kind of juice and what kind of approach Florida State will have in this contest against the Lions on Saturday afternoon.
We'll look forward to continuing to follow it. Jeff, I appreciate the time. Thanks so much for joining us. Enjoy the ride, and hope you have a great call this week, and I'm sure we'll visit again down the road.
Great to see you, my friend. Thanks for having me on your show, and we'll definitely talk down the road. We'll talk soon.
You bet.